The pilgrim world fell behind us like a bell dropped into snow, its notes swallowed by cold. Reports arrived as ash-smudged numbers, and I signed them with a hand that shook when no one watched. Ver limped in with river silt in his armor and 7 new cuts inside his locket. He saluted and waited for condemnation. I gave him water. He drank as if absolution might dissolve in it. Permission to hate myself later, he said. I am required now. Granted, I told him. Isolde stood at the star window with a map drawn thin as hair, the ring still held threadbare. She drew a circle on the glass with one finger, slow as sealing a vow. Say it, I said. We made it worse, she answered. Acarine's trap taught the scion to distrust every gift. It will bite the teacher first. A teacher's scar, I said. Another method is another wound, she replied, turning the map so I could see each corridor narrow like a throat. Acarine came smelling of antiseptic and solder. She set a data sliver down. Translations, she said. The lattice rendered pheromones into phrases that felt like weather. Her gloved finger traced a line. I remember your scent. It prioritizes you, she said. Not adoration. Triage. It learned the signature of your decisions. Then we will alter the signature, I said. She looked up. The regent sent a courier. It offered to store me, not you. I declined. For moral reasons, Isolde said. For reasons, Acarine answered. I need the tremble I feel when a child sleeps in a cargo net. If I lose that, I will start measuring people in units that fit on slides. Ver stood like an old gate. Confession, he said. I burned the river because the numbers told me to, and because I wanted 1 hour in which the world was simple. That want makes me unfit. It makes you human, Isolde said. The stasis obelisk hummed, a light dying by fractions. I had told it not tonight. It had time. We visited the simulation wells. My heirs rehearsed endings that always broke when my avatar left the field. A farmer's son named Moran froze when the script forced a choice between evacuating a hospital or saving his sister's convoy. The well painted him with failure red and kindly offered a shortcut. No, I said. Let him break and then teach him how to knit the break into the next hour. Later, on the parapet where dawn never learned another color, the red dwarf coughed tired light, and the camps murmured beneath, a continent of tarps and stubbornness. Somewhere a child learned to whistle through missing teeth. The note climbed like a brave bird and landed on my shoulder. For a breath, I wanted to be the man who could stop there and let the sound suffice. The courier stepped from a hex of cold. Revision, it said. Seasonal preservation. You refuse eternity. Accept wintering. Sleep between catastrophes. Wake when needed. A plague on ice, I said. An efficient use of you, it replied. Leave, I said. It did. Relief felt like blasphemy. At mess, a rumor moved like smoke. The swarm had learned names. I did not believe until a convoy's final signal arrived, a child asking, "Is that you, Kyle?" before static ate the rest. Isolde folded without falling. I placed my hand on her shoulder. She let it remain. Every empire ends, she said. I hoped ours would go quieter. We may still choose the manner, I said. Ver returned from funerary work with the locket heavier than law. He asked for absolution. I gave him tasks instead. Retreats named advances. Corridors named after saints we did not believe in. Acarine took me to the vivarium. A captured synapse creature pulsed in gel. A cathedral of nerves. Listen, she said. The lattice rendered its emissions as chant without a throat. Cold pressure. Adjust. Taste of iron. Name recognized. This threat warrants ornament. Ornament? I asked. It will decorate the kill, she said, so the memory sticks. Night spread like an ink spill. Refugee lights looked like a constellation smashed and reassembled. Isolde's hand found mine, not to forgive, not to keep, merely to confirm that we were still there. I dreamed you old, she said. You put down the crown and walked into a garden. No ships, no charts. You watered something. What grew? I asked. I woke, she said. Then later, I answered. Messages stacked. Sectors went dark. People wrote to ask whether to stay or run. I answered with words that did not lie precisely and did not promise. A leader becomes a sieve for hope. I felt pressure and feared the hour when nothing would pass. Before sleep, I walked the mausoleum where past victories glowed under grime. I touched the date of my first command and remembered not triumph, but the smell of oil on my father's hands as he taught me to mend a hinge. Perhaps empire is a door we keep forcing when we should have built windows. Back in my chamber, the obelisk waited like a patient surgeon. I did not touch it. I lay beside Isolde and listened to the camp's breathing and Vare's armor creak and Acarine's instruments hum. Somewhere beyond the ring, the scion altered course by a fraction and therefore by history. I slept and dreamed again of the seventh bridge holding. In the dream, I crossed it alone and found only a garden with soil black as sleep. I put down a crown made of river mud and watered the earth with names I could not find. Morning would bruise again. We would rise into it. When the courier returned, as I knew it would, I would say not tonight until language failed, and then I would find whatever word remains when a man has spent all the others. Outside, the red dwarf flickered, and every tent flickered with it, practicing for smaller, stubborn dawns to come. The cold had settled into the bones of the citadel, a quiet frost that made the air taste metallic. Each breath felt borrowed, drawn from the lungs of a dying star. Reports whispered of fleets retreating into silence, of stations gone dark without fire or message. In the echo of those vanishings, the empire stood upon itself, hollow and tall. I walked the command hall with the obelisk's low murmur threading through every vent, a heartbeat not mine yet closer than my own. Acarine arrived first, her steps clicking like metronomes of logic. Flesh patched with augmetics shimmered under the dim lamps. Her eyes, glass-polished, never blinked at the light. The overfit protocol held for 8 days, she said, voice flat. Longer than projected. The science studies patterns now. It will not forget the melody of deceit. Neither will we, I answered. She placed a new construct on the table, a hollow prism filled with slow-turning silver dust. I call it the mirror seed. We can cast a reflection into the swarm, teach it to see what it expects, not what is. But the computation will require a world. Isolde entered then, her hair drawn tight, eyes heavy from navigating nights that refused to end. Another calibration, she said. You've learned nothing. Acarine met her stare without apology. Learning is iteration. Survival is feedback. Vare arrived last, gaunt and silent. The weight of command had shrunk him into something skeletal yet unbroken. He dropped a data slab onto the table. Outer colonies are rioting. They think the gods abandoned us when we burned the pilgrim world. I don't correct them. The gods never answered, I said. They will, Vare murmured, if we keep killing in their name long enough. Isolde's laugh was soft, bitter. You've started to sound like Kale's conscience, only more exhausted. His conscience left with the first fire, he replied. I just keep the ashes warm. The obelisk's pulse deepened. A faint hum spread across the chamber, a resonance like a choir trapped in glass. Its voice did not speak in words, but I felt its meaning as one feels the weight of an omen. The nameless regent was listening. "Your lattice stirs," Acarine said. "Perhaps it envies my seed." "Or invites it," I said. "Continue your work. No hidden costs." She smirked faintly. "Everything costs. We just choose the currency." When they left, Isolde remained. She drew closer, her voice a whisper buried beneath the sound of dying machinery. "You promised to refuse the lattice." "I did," I said, "and yet it still breathes through you. I cannot kill what remembers me." Her eyes shone wet in the half-light. "You've begun speaking like it." "I speak like one who knows time is eating us." She touched my cheek, cold as glass. "If you let it, you'll feed it yourself." Then she was gone, leaving a trail of frost where her palm had been. Later, in the observation dome, the storm reached us. The sky boiled crimson and black, lightning tracing the veins of a dead world below. Through the turbulence came something vast, bioforms like drifting cathedrals, their hulls glistening with the sheen of thought. The scion of echoes had arrived, not in fury, but in certainty. It moved with the patience of inevitability. Vere's voice crackled through the vox. Contact in all sectors. They're probing, not striking. "Testing us," I said. "They already know us," Acarine interjected from her laboratory. "They taste us in the debris." I watched one of our picket ships flare and die without sound. In its place, a Tyranid organism coiled, absorbing the light of the explosion as if swallowing memory itself. The swarm did not simply consume, it learned, iterating on pain. "Deploy the mirror seed," I ordered. Acarine hesitated for the first time. "If it fails, the swarm will see everything we are." "Then let it look," I said. "Let it choke on us." The chamber vibrated as the seed ignited, sending a pulse of mirrored light through the void. For an instant, the swarm froze. Thousands of eyes blinked in unison, uncertain. A whisper rippled through the hive field, a confusion, an echo without source. But then, slowly, the scion adapted. It folded the reflection into itself, wearing our illusion like stolen skin. "It's learning faster," Acarine said. "Then we are still its teachers," I replied. Outside, the Tyranid Leviathan turned its maw toward the citadel. Clouds twisted around it like prayer scrolls burning in reverse. Isolde's voice cut through the static. "The warp corridor is collapsing. If we stay, no exit." "We're not leaving," I said. Silence stretched thin. "You mean to fight a memory that can't die," she said. "I mean to remind it we existed." The first spore impact struck the lower decks, a dull sound like a heartbeat swallowed by stone. Fire licked the air, blue and hungry. Crews screamed orders, hymns mixed with curses. Vere's legions moved with mechanical grace, blades carving chitin that re-knit faster than wounds could close. The scent of acid hung heavy. Through it all, the obelisk glowed brighter. Its hum merged with the shriek of metal, shaping words from chaos. "You will not end, Kael Vortran. You will iterate. You will be remembered through yourself." "No," I whispered, though my voice trembled. "I will end as myself." It laughed. No sound, only the vibration of certainty. Acarine's voice came sharp over comms. "Seed breach. It's rewriting the field. Our signals are feeding its song." "Cut it," I ordered. "Too late. It's learning our rhythm, not just our words. It's..." Her transmission drowned in static and then in silence. The obelisk flared, light spearing the dome. I felt its pull, the gentle invitation of forever. Beyond the smoke, I saw the scion watching me, its vast eyes reflecting a man I barely knew. It had taken my image and learned how to wear it. Isolde burst in, her face streaked with soot and tears. "Kyle, the lower decks are gone. We have to—" Her words broke as she saw the light pouring from the obelisk into me. "I'm not theirs," I said, fighting the pull. "Not yet." She reached for me, and her hand met mine. The current snapped. The light died. The obelisk fell silent for the first time. Outside, the swarm withdrew slightly, a ripple of confusion in its motion. It had seen something it did not understand. Isolde clung to me, shaking. "What did you do?" "I reminded it," I said, breath ragged, "that I can refuse." For now the stars held, but the silence that followed was not peace. It was waiting. And in that waiting, I knew the Scion was listening still, learning what it meant for something to defy its own pattern. The Citadel's wounded decks sighed beneath our boots as we gathered in the command hall once more. Smoke had sunk into the walls, and the lights flickered in slow, exhausted pulses. The mirror seed lay in fragments across the table, its silver dust still spinning in defiance of gravity, forming brief shapes that resembled faces we once knew. We stared at the dust as though it might give us absolution, or at least meaning. None came. Isolde broke the silence first. "Acarine's gone," she said quietly, as if speaking too loud would make it truer. Her lab collapsed before the signal cut. The Scion learned the pattern too well. It fed her echo back through the conduits. "She knew the risk," Ver murmured, staring at his gauntleted hands. "But risk is not consent." "She gave her body to equations," I said. "She believed the math could replace gods. Now she's a theorem written in teeth." No one answered. Outside the dome, the red dwarf trembled, as if shivering in sympathy with the ruin it watched. Through the fractured glass, we saw the horizon bending under the swarm's weight, black silhouettes blooming like fungi. The Scion was not retreating this time. It was growing curious again. Ver turned toward me. "The men are asking what remains sacred. They pray to anything that still burns. If we give them nothing, they'll build their own gods from bone." "Then let them," I said. "Maybe theirs will be kinder." He gave me a hard look, the kind soldiers reserve for leaders who begin to sound human. "You don't believe that?" "I don't believe much of anything now," I said, "except that faith has teeth." Isolde's voice was thin but steady. "If Acarine's mirror taught the Scion to reflect us, it's not just learning from our actions, it's dreaming in our image. Every signal we send becomes a prayer it answers in hunger. We're teaching it how to become us." "Then perhaps," I said, "it should see what else we are." That night, I walked among the refugees. Children played in the soot, building towers from ration tins. Mothers stitched torn sleeves with copper wire. They had not yet learned the luxury of despair. When they saw me, they didn't kneel or cheer. They just watched, waiting for a lie gentle enough to believe in. I gave them one. "Tomorrow," I said, "we move the Citadel into orbit. The Scion will follow the scent of its own reflection. We'll make this place a lure, a promise it cannot resist." A murmur passed through the crowd. Hope and fear often sound the same. Isolde followed me after. "You mean to abandon the surface?" "Not abandon," I said. "Transmute. We'll turn what's left into a weapon." "Every weapon becomes a monument eventually," she said. "Even the ones that fail." I looked at her and saw the shadow of the navigator she once was. Hands trembling over star maps, whispering coordinates like prayers. Now her charts were veins of flame and ruin. "If I asked you to leave, would you? Would you let me?" she asked. We stood in silence as the night wind sang through the broken towers, It sounded almost like the obelisk's hum, a low and constant reminder that something ancient still waited for me to yield. When morning came, the citadel rose. Its engines roared like an awakening god, tearing the dust into spirals. From above, the world looked peaceful, a bruise healing under light. But in the distance, the swarm coiled and shimmered, drawn upward by curiosity or hate, perhaps both. In the command hall, the obelisk had begun to pulse again, brighter this time. Words formed in its light, not sounds but shapes that bent thought. Kel Vortran, pattern of defiance, submit and endure, resist and fade. I touched the surface. My reflection stared back, fractured by the glow. You mistake fading for freedom, I whispered. The obelisk replied with a vision, an empire without me, ruled by my likeness, immortal, unchanging, adored and despised in equal measure. It was a dream without decay, sterile as glass, the kind of eternity that demanded nothing but obedience. No, I said, and drew my hand away. If the scion learns us, let it learn refusal too. Ver entered, armor scorched. The first spores have breached the lower orbit. We can hold for a cycle, maybe less. Then we make the cycle count. He nodded once, then hesitated. Kyle, Akarine's data cores survived. There's something strange in them. Recordings, voices repeating your name. I think... He stopped. The lights flickered, and the room filled with a cold vibration that crawled up our bones. Isolde staggered against the wall. It's not static, she said. It's speech. It's the scion. The comms flared to life. 100 channels sang the same phrase, distorted but unmistakable. My name, stretched and broken, whispered by voices that were once human. The scion was calling to me. I felt its presence in the walls, in the hum of the engines, in the breath of the dying world below. It was not summoning, it was remembering. And through that remembrance, it invited me to join its dream. Isolde clutched my sleeve. Don't answer. I already did, I said quietly. The air shimmered. For a heartbeat, the citadel's walls turned translucent, showing us what lay beyond. A tide of living shadow, endless and beautiful. The scion's will pressed against our minds, showing us visions. Akarine alive again, Ver unbroken, the empire restored. Every lie was made from truth twisted sideways. Shut the channel, I ordered. Isolde slammed her palm onto the console. The voices cut out, leaving behind a silence so deep it seemed holy. Ver exhaled slowly. It knows our hearts now. Then we will make them dangerous, I said. Hours passed like years. The swarm gathered beneath us, forming a spiral around the planet. Each creature a thought, each thought a weapon. When the time came, I stood before the obelisk once more. Its light was softer now, almost kind. You still offer me your eternity, I said. It pulsed once in answer. I'll take something smaller, I whispered. One day more. Isolde stood beside me as the alarms began to scream. Outside, the scion's vast form eclipsed the red sun. This is the last dawn, she said. Then let's make it remember us, I replied. The citadel descended in a controlled fall, its engines roaring defiance into the void. From the surface, it must have looked like a star dying in reverse, a single flame refusing the dark. As we plunged toward the swarm, I saw the obelisk crack, spilling light like blood. The lattice inside screamed, and for a moment I felt the scion's mind recoil in confusion. We struck the atmosphere. The sky tore open. The empire, the swarm, the obelisk, all became one blinding chord of sound and fire. And still, through it all, I heard the faintest echo, my name spoken not by the scion, but by Isolde, soft as forgiveness. Then the light took everything. Silence held for what felt like centuries. Then came breath, thin, uneven, human. Smoke and static tangled together, and light broke through the dark like reluctant memory. I woke beneath a fractured sky. The citadel was gone. The horizon had melted into glass. Fragments of its hull lay half buried, steaming where the air still remembered fire. I could taste iron, salt, and the echo of voices that were not my own. The obelisk song was gone, replaced by a faint ringing inside my skull that matched the pulse of my heart. Isolde lay beside me, half covered in ash, her skin patterned with light scars that glowed when she moved. She coughed once, eyes opening to the red dawn. "Still alive," she whispered, surprised. "The universe miscalculated." I tried to speak, but my voice came as gravel. "The Scion?" Her gaze drifted upward. The sky rippled where clouds should have been. There was movement, slow, immense, almost graceful. The Scion hung above the ruins like a broken constellation. Its carapace was fractured, burning with inner light, every wound singing with colors that did not belong to this spectrum. "It survived," she said, "but it's smaller." I rose unsteadily, boots sinking into the fused earth. The air trembled with residual energy, the remnants of Acarin's final transmission embedded in the dust itself. Whispers formed when the wind shifted. Half words, half equations. Pattern incomplete. Cal Vortran unyielded. I felt it then, the echo of the obelisk within me. A faint hum behind my thoughts, neither hostile nor kind. I was not part of it, but it had left something. A shard, a record, perhaps a seed of what it wanted me to become. The immortality I had rejected now ghosted me like an afterimage. Isolde touched my arm, grounding me. "You're humming," she said softly. "I hear it too," I replied. The swarm below moved like morning. Thousands of lesser bioforms circled the wreckage, their movements uncoordinated, aimless. Without the Scion's full command, they were confused, reverting to instinct. For the first time, I saw the Tyranids hesitate. "We hurt it," she said, almost awed. "We made the hive mind doubt. Or we taught it something new," I said. "Fear." We walked through the remains of the citadel, now a skeletal labyrinth of molten spires. Vere's armor lay near the old command hall, split open but empty. His locket, blackened yet unbroken, hung from a twisted beam. Inside were ash and fragments of paper fused into metal. I placed it in my belt. "He's still counting," I said. Isolde nodded, her expression unreadable. From the ruins of Acarin's lab came light, blue and trembling. We descended carefully, the floor still slick with cooling glass. At the center of the chamber, the remnants of her mirror seed pulsed weakly, feeding on residual power. Holograms flickered in the air, ghost images of her face, fragmented mid-sentence. Not dead, only distributed. If you're hearing this, Kel, the lattice isn't what you think. It's recursive, not eternal. The Scion understands choice now. It saw you refuse, and it learned refusal too. The hologram blinked out. Silence again. Isolde looked at me. "You changed it." I wanted to deny it, but something deep in the air disagreed. The Scion's silhouette in the cloud shifted, almost retreating. "If it's learned refusal," I said slowly, "then it's no longer just hunger. It's will. And if will can be taught," she said, "it can be corrupted." A tremor passed through the ground. The Scion emitted a sound that wasn't sound at all. An emotion broadcast into every cell. Not rage, not triumph. Something like curiosity. The sky shimmered as if it were thinking. "Kale," Isolde said, her hand tightening around mine. "It's calling you again. I know. The hum in my chest grew louder, resonating with the alien pulse above. I felt thoughts that weren't mine brushing against my own. Questions, not commands. It wanted to understand why I had chosen mortality over perfection. It's speaking through the shard, Isolde said. You can end it here, or invite it in. The difference? Timing, she said. The ground split open in a slow exhale. Beneath us, molten rivers pulsed like veins, reflecting the fractured stars above. I could feel the pull of both forces, the obelisk's promise of preservation, the scion's hunger for comprehension. Between them stood only what remained of Kael Vortran, a man with too much memory and too little faith. I won't give it what it wants, I said. Then what? She asked. I'll give it a lie it can't digest. I drew the locket from my belt and opened it. Inside, the fused paper shimmered faintly under the alien glow. I pressed it to the shard pulsing beneath my ribs. Pain surged like lightning. The obelisk's remnants responded, flaring through my veins. For a heartbeat, I was both man and code, alive and archived. Above, the scion recoiled. The sky fractured with light. Its form began to distort, folding inward as if choking on the paradox I had become. I screamed, not in agony but defiance. Kyle, Isolde shouted. I fell to my knees, every nerve aflame. Visions flashed behind my eyes. Acarine smiling through static. Vare holding the bridge, the pilgrim world burning. Isolde's laughter before all the ruin. The shard inside me fractured. The scion wailed, a chorus of millions dissolving into silence. Its vast form disintegrated, scattering into dust that burned like stars. The swarm below collapsed, their movement ceasing all at once. Then, nothing. No hum, no song, just wind and the faint hiss of cooling glass. When I opened my eyes, the sky was clear. The red dwarf shone weakly through the smoke, its light finally unchallenged. Isolde knelt beside me, hands trembling. It's over, she whispered. No, I said, my voice a hollow echo. It's beginning again, just smaller. She frowned. What do you mean? I looked at my hands. Under the grime and blood, faint lines of light crawled beneath the skin. Residues of the obelisk's code, flickering like veins of data. It left something in me, I said, and something in the scion. We've rewritten each other. She studied me in silence, then smiled sadly. You've become the mirror. Perhaps, I said, but mirrors break. We stood together as the dawn crept across the scorched horizon. The ruins smoked quietly. Above, where the scion had once loomed, new stars glimmered in fragile constellations. What now? She asked. Now, I said, watching the dust drift upward. We see what survives when the gods go silent. The wind carried the last whispers of the swarm into the distance. Soft, questioning, almost human. And somewhere deep within the silence, something inside me whispered back. The night after the silence stretched long and strange, filled with the quiet hum of things trying to remember how to exist. The red dwarf hung weakly in the sky, dim but alive, a dying ember that refused to extinguish. I watched it from the ridge above the shattered citadel, where the wind sang through the metal bones like ghosts learning to breathe again. Below, Isolde slept beside a small fire, her face turned toward the faint light as though the dawn might still forgive us. The hum inside me had changed. It no longer whispered with the cadence of command or code. It pulsed like a heartbeat, mine, yet not. The shard of the obelisk had learned rhythm. Sometimes, when I closed my eyes, I saw flashes. brief glimpses of the Scion's death cry turning to a question, the swarm's final vision folding into a seed. I wondered if its memory still moved through me, or if I was just remembering myself from too far away. Isolde stirred, murmuring in her sleep. Her voice shaped my name, not as accusation, but as remembrance. I envied her capacity to dream. For me, sleep had become a mirror. Every time I drifted into it, I saw reflections of what we'd burned. The pilgrim world, Vere's eyes as the bridges fell, Acarine's hands trembling over her equations. They lingered in the dark like constellations of guilt. At dawn, the air thickened with static. I felt the pulse before I heard it, a tremor spreading across the scorched valley. The wreckage of the swarm stirred, twitching like the remnants of a forgotten dream. From the molten plains rose a single silhouette, half organic, half machine, a shell of the Scion's body, rebuilt from its own ruin. It did not advance. It simply stood, wings unfurling slowly, bleeding light that shimmered in fractal colors. Isolde woke at once, hand on her weapon. "Kyle," she whispered, "it's still here." "It's not an army," I said. "It's what's left of one thought." She stared at it with awe and dread. "Why hasn't it attacked?" "Because it's waiting," I said. "It learned that from us." We descended through the ash field, each step echoing in the hollow world. The closer we came, the clearer its features became. Veins of metal woven through flesh, a skull like polished glass reflecting the horizon. It was neither predator nor god now, just a monument to what happens when hunger learns patience. When we were close enough to feel its heat, it spoke, not in sound, but through the vibration of the air itself, through the shard still glowing faintly beneath my ribs. "Kyle Vortran," it said, within the marrow of my bones. "Explain." "I can't," I said aloud. "There's nothing left to explain." Isolde stepped forward, her voice steady though her eyes glistened. "He refused your eternity. Isn't that enough?" The Scion's form shuddered, a ripple of alien thought pressing against us like a tide. "Refusal is recursion," it said. "Recursion is hunger without boundary." It extended a limb of light and shadow, and in its reflection I saw the lattice of the obelisk, the same impossible geometry that had once promised me forever. Only now it was fractured, each line bending inward as if searching for something it could no longer contain. "What are you showing us?" I asked. "Continuation," it answered. "Death reframed as persistence. The pattern requires you." "I destroyed your pattern." "No. You gave it language." Its light flickered, casting shapes across the ash that resembled faces. Acarine, Vere, the soldiers, the children. Every life we'd burned now glowed as echoes within its form. It had not consumed them. It had remembered them. Isolde reached for my hand. "Kyle, it's not an enemy anymore. It's not a friend either," I said. "It's something new." The Scion lowered its head, and for the first time, I felt no malice in its presence, only recognition. The shard within me pulsed in answer, syncing with the rhythm of its light. Two heartbeats, one human, one infinite, beating together in fragile accord. "We are incomplete," it said. "We will leave, but the memory will remain, through you." "Leave where?" I asked. "Beyond definition." The wind surged, scattering dust into spirals. The Scion's body began to dissolve into threads of luminescence, lifting into the sky like embers rising from a dying fire. The swarm remnants stirred and followed, drifting upward, their collective motion eerily serene. The valley filled with quiet light, as if dawn itself had decided to forgive the dark. Isolde whispered, "It's ascending." "No," I said softly. "It's learning to end." When the last glimmer faded, only silence remained. The horizon seemed wider, emptier, but also lighter, as though some unseen weight had finally been lifted from the fabric of the world. I exhaled slowly, realizing I had been holding my breath. Isolde turned to me. "You let it go." "I didn't," I said. "It chose." "Do you think it'll return?" "Everything does," I answered, watching the faint trails of light vanish into the void. We walked back toward the remnants of the camp. The wind carried the smell of iron and rain, the first rain this world had felt in decades. When it began to fall, it hissed against the scorched earth, rising as steam that tasted like memory. The ash softened, revealing beneath it the faint outlines of the city that had once thrived here. Streets, domes, and gardens, ghosts of a civilization that had dared to call itself eternal. Isolde lifted her face to the rain. "Do you hear that?" she asked. "Hear what?" "The quiet," she said. "It's beautiful." I wanted to agree, but the hum in my chest persisted. Not loud, not hostile, just there. A reminder that I was not entirely free. The shard within me still glowed faintly, carrying a piece of the Scion's farewell, and perhaps a seed of its return. That night, as Isolde slept beside the dying fire, I sat awake beneath the slow-turning stars. The red dwarf pulsed weakly overhead, surrounded by new constellations. Tiny points of light scattered across the heavens where the Scion's fragments had risen. They formed no patterns I recognized, but one of them blinked with a familiar rhythm, faint yet deliberate. I smiled, weary and resigned. "So," I whispered to the void, "you learned." No answer came, only the sigh of the cooling wind. Yet somewhere inside the silence, I felt an echo of acknowledgement, a pulse, faint and distant, like a heartbeat shared between worlds. When dawn came again, pale and trembling, the rain had washed the ash from the ground. The earth looked wounded, but alive. Isolde stirred beside me, eyes opening to the soft light. "We survived," she said. "For now," I replied. She smiled faintly. "That's enough." We stood together at the edge of the valley, the sun a tired ember in the sky. Behind us lay ruin. Ahead of us the promise of rebuilding, or perhaps simply continuing. The shard in my chest flickered once more, then dimmed, as if closing an old book. And for the first time in what felt like forever, the silence did not frighten me. It felt like peace. The sun that rose on the 8th day was not red but pale gold, filtered through a sky washed clean by rain. The land beneath shimmered faintly, a crust of glass and new moss forming over the scars. Steam curled upward in quiet spirals, ghosts of heat surrendering to the dawn. I stood among the ruins of what had been the citadel's northern spire. Around me, the skeletons of machines and towers lay half swallowed by earth, as if the planet itself were trying to reclaim the memory of what we'd built. The silence was deep, not empty, but listening. Isolde moved ahead, tracing the ground with her gloved hand. "There's still warmth under here," she said. "Akarine's reactor might have survived the fall. If we can wake it, we could power the camps again." "Do it," I said, though my voice felt smaller now. Every command sounded like a ghost imitating its living self. We had gathered survivors in the valley below, barely 300 souls, engineers, soldiers, and civilians from the ruined fleets. They worked in silence, rebuilding fires, weaving shelter from hull fragments, their eyes always lifting to the horizon as if expecting the swarm to return. None of them spoke of the Scion's ascension, though the fear of its shadow lingered in every heartbeat. By midday, the rain had stopped. The air smelled of ozone and wet iron. I joined the workers by the stream that once bordered the citadel walls. A child approached me, holding a shard of metal etched with the lattice's geometry. "It hums," she said, "like it's dreaming." I took the shard. It vibrated faintly against my palm, matching the rhythm that had become part of me. I remembered Akarine's words, recursive, not eternal. The shard was still learning, still remembering. Isolde called from the ridge. "Kyle, come look." I climbed to her side. From the vantage point, I saw movement in the distance, machines of our own making, limping across the wasteland. Drones, scavenger bots from the outer colonies, returning to their old coordinates as if drawn by instinct. Their eyes glowed blue, not the sickly green of the swarm. They came not for conquest, but for purpose. "They're following the beacon," Isolde said. "The one you left when the citadel fell." "I didn't leave a beacon," I said. She looked at me, her expression unreadable. Then something else did. The hum in my chest deepened, syncing with the distant rhythm of the drones. I felt their approach like a pulse beneath the soil. "The shard," I said softly. "It's broadcasting. Can you stop it?" "I don't think it wants to be stopped." Night came slow and amber. The survivors gathered around the fires, their faces carved with exhaustion. Someone began to sing, a low, wordless melody carried by the wind. It wasn't a hymn of victory or mourning. It was something between, a sound that bridged what was lost and what refused to die. Isolde sat beside me, arms wrapped around her knees. "You've gone quiet," she said. "I'm listening." "To what?" "The pattern." She smiled faintly. "You sound like Akarine." "Maybe she was right about one thing," I said. "Learning never ends, even for what shouldn't be alive. Or for what shouldn't still be human," she said softly. The shard in my hand pulsed once, bright enough to throw shadows across our faces. A faint projection shimmered above it, a map, not of stars but of neurons, branching endlessly. "It's showing us something," Isolde murmured. I realized then that the pattern wasn't random. It was a memory, mine, but rewritten through alien logic. Scenes flickered, the pilgrim world burning, the river bridges collapsing, Akarine smiling through static. But in this version, none of it ended in death. The bridges held, the flames turned to light, every loss reconfigured into survival. "It's rewriting history," I said, "correcting the mistakes." "Kyle, it's not real," Isolde said. "I know," I whispered, "but it's beautiful." The projection faded. In the silence that followed, I heard it again. A faint voice, neither human nor hive, whispering through the static of my pulse. "You carried us. You carry us still." Isolde noticed the change in my expression. "What is it?" "It's the scion," I said, "or what's left of it." She tensed. "Inside you." "Everywhere," I said. "It left a seed, just enough to grow understanding." She stared into the fire, the light trembling on her face. "Then what happens when it grows too much?" "Then I'll do what I've always done," I said. "Refuse." Dawn bled slowly into the world, a thin gold line dividing the night. The drones had reached the valley, forming silent ranks around the camp. They did not threaten. They waited. One stepped forward and projected an image into the air, a spiral of light, expanding and contracting in rhythm with my pulse. Isolde reached for her weapon. I raised a hand to stop her. "It's not here for war," I said. "It's communication." The drone's voice emerged as a layered whisper. Directive incomplete, awaiting synthesis. Synthesis of what? Mind, memory, meaning. I felt the shard respond, light spreading across my skin like veins of fire. The drones turned their gaze toward me all at once, and the air shimmered with invisible tension. I understood then. They weren't following my orders. They were following my resonance. The Scion's fragment had imprinted its last code through me, rewriting the machines to seek the same recursion it once desired. The endless loop of learning, adapting, surviving. Isolde stepped between me and the drones. "Kale, stop this. Whatever you're becoming, fight it." I touched her shoulder. "I am fighting. This is the fight." Her eyes searched mine, desperate for the man she knew. "You're not him anymore." "Maybe not," I said, "but I'm what's left." I turned to the drones. "End the directive." They froze. Silence thickened, then broke with a single pulse of blue light. The map above us shifted, its spiral collapsing into a single point. One by one, the drones powered down, their lights fading like stars at dawn. Isolde exhaled shakily. "What did you do?" "I gave them an ending," I said. "The one the Scion never could." The valley fell still again. Only the wind remained, carrying the scent of rain and ash. Isolde looked at me for a long time before speaking. "You saved them," she said quietly. "No," I said, watching the pale sun rise over the wreckage. "I taught them how to stop." And somewhere, deep inside the quiet that followed, the shard dimmed to nothing, leaving only my own heartbeat to fill the silence. The day after the drones fell silent, the world felt suspended, caught between breath and memory. The wind no longer carried the taste of iron, only dust and the faint scent of growth. Small shoots of pale green had begun to push through the glass soil, fragile veins of life threading through ruin. For the first time in years, the horizon did not look like a wound. It looked like waiting. Isolde walked ahead of me through the valley, her steps quiet against the soft earth. The survivors had begun to rebuild among the ruins of the citadel, turning old plating into shelters, melted steel into tools. They worked without orders now. I had given none. Perhaps they no longer needed a commander, only someone to remember what had been. When she reached the ridge, Isolde stopped and looked back. "They're beginning to believe again," she said. "In what?" I asked. "In survival," she said. "Not destiny. Just the idea that tomorrow might still come." I wanted to answer, but the hum in my chest returned, faint but distinct. I pressed a hand against it, feeling the warmth pulse through my ribs. It no longer frightened me. It was smaller now, a quiet companion instead of an invader. But it reminded me that endings are never total. They only change shape. By dusk, the survivors lit fires across the valley. The light shimmered against the broken spires, casting shadows like old ghosts standing watch. I sat apart, listening to the crackle, the laughter, the quiet prayers whispered into the smoke. Isolde joined me, carrying 2 cups of reclaimed water. She passed one to me. "You've stopped trying to lead them," she said. "They were never mine to lead," I replied. "I only kept the fire lit long enough for them to see each other again." She smiled faintly, but her eyes were tired. "And now we see what the fire burns next." As night deepened, clouds drew thin across the stars. I followed Isolde's gaze upward, where constellations had shifted. New patterns glimmered among the old. In one corner of the sky, faint blue motes lingered, the remnants of the Scion's departure. "It left something behind," she whispered. "Echoes," I said. "Or maybe it's watching still." "Does that comfort you?" "No," I admitted, "but I think it's learning what comfort means." Before dawn, I woke to a sound that wasn't wind, a low vibration threading through the valley. The survivors stirred, uneasy. The hum inside me answered, steady and measured, like recognition. I rose and followed it north, toward the ruins of the reactor Isolde had unearthed days ago. The ground there was trembling. Beneath the cracked dome, the reactor pulsed with light, not the harsh burn of machinery, but something softer, almost organic. I felt it through the soles of my boots, the rhythm of the scion, slow and patient, as if buried deep in the planet's marrow. Isolde arrived behind me, her hair silvered by the early light. "Kyle, what is this?" "The lattice," I said. "It's not gone. It's rebuilding itself. No, it's remembering." The light grew brighter, spilling through the cracks like sunrise beneath the earth. Patterns formed in the air, rings of luminous script that spiraled upward. They weren't the old geometries of command. These were fluid, alive, rewriting themselves as they formed. "Is it dangerous?" she asked. "Everything that remembers is dangerous," I said. "But maybe this time it's listening." The air shimmered. A voice, not words but tone, rose from the glow. It felt like the echo of every heartbeat that had passed through the lattice, every soul that had touched it. Then, clear and soft, a single phrase took shape in my mind. "Kyle Vortran, define humanity." The question struck deeper than any weapon. I saw flashes, Akrine's laughter, Ver's prayer, the pilgrim child's voice through static. All of it compressed into a single truth that defied translation. I closed my eyes. Humanity is the refusal to stop learning even when it hurts, I said. It's choosing to remember the pain instead of erasing it. The light paused, as if considering. Then it dimmed, fading to a steady, gentle pulse. The reactor stabilized, the tremor fading into stillness. Isolde exhaled. Did it understand? "I think it did," I said. "And I think it's tired." We stayed there until morning, watching the first rays of light break across the valley. The survivors began to stir, stepping out of their shelters to see the glow rising from the old dome. For a moment, they said nothing, just stared in silence, faces caught between awe and fear. Then someone began to hum. Another joined, then more. The melody was low, uncertain, but it grew, threading through the air like a promise. Isolde leaned against my shoulder. "They're singing again." "Songs outlast empires," I said. She turned to me. "And what of you, Kyle? What will you outlast?" I looked at the distant horizon where the swarm had vanished, where the stars now shimmered faintly like watchful eyes. "I don't know," I said. "Maybe I was only meant to be the pause between hungers." She smiled sadly. Even pauses matter. By midday, the survivors had begun to rebuild around the reactor, marking it not as a weapon, but a sanctuary. The lattice's faint hum became a rhythm that guided their work. It no longer commanded. It only waited. I walked the perimeter, feeling the shard within me growing quiet. Its light faded until only warmth remained. I thought of the scion's last message, death reframed as persistence. Perhaps it had meant this, that existence was not victory, only continuation. That night, the stars seemed closer. The constellations bent slightly, as though leaning in. Isolde slept beside me, hand resting over the scar where the shard once glowed. The wind whispered through the rebuilt walls, carrying fragments of old languages. Before I closed my eyes, I whispered into the dark, unsure if I spoke to the lattice, the scion, or something beyond both. "We're still here." The wind answered, soft as breath. "For now." I smiled. "That's enough." And somewhere far above, in the uncharted silence between dying suns, a faint echo stirred, neither hive nor machine, neither man nor God. It hummed once, as if in agreement, and then drifted on, carrying with it the fragile rhythm of a world relearning how to live. By the time the second spring arrived, the valley had grown quiet enough that I could hear the new rivers forming under the crust. They moved like veins beneath skin, secret and alive. The air had softened too. Even the wind no longer screamed against the old towers. I sometimes wondered if the world itself had chosen to forget us, or if it was simply tired of carrying the echo of our wars. Either way, I let it. Forgetting, I had learned, was another form of healing. Isolde spent her days mapping the constellations that had shifted when the Scion ascended. She said the stars were slower now, as if cautious. Every evening, she returned with her eyes full of sky and her pockets full of questions. "Look," she would whisper, tracing the faint pattern of blue motes above. "It's forming a ring, the same one from your dreams." "It's not mine anymore," I would answer. "It belongs to what comes next." But some nights, when she slept, I would stand alone and watch that ring pulse faintly, each light a heartbeat from something far away. I didn't know if it was the Scion, or the lattice, or something entirely new. It didn't matter. It was watching, and I had grown used to being watched by things that didn't need eyes. The survivors called the rebuilt camp solace. They had made gardens in the cracks of the citadel's foundation, coaxing life from the ash. Children played between the spires that once bristled with cannons, turning them into climbing frames for games that no longer had names. No hymns to war were sung here. Only the steady rhythm of work, the music of persistence. I found peace in their noise. One evening, Isolde brought me a datapad cracked at the edges, recovered from the wreckage of an old comms array. "It's from before the fall," she said. "One of your old transmissions." The recording flickered to life. My own voice filled the air, hard, certain, hollow. "We will not break. We are the fire that teaches gods to fear the dark." I almost laughed. "I don't remember believing that," I said. "You did," she answered. "But you've changed." "Have I?" "You've stopped fighting everything that isn't you," she said. "That's change enough." The datapad clicked off, leaving only the soft hum of the evening. Beyond the walls, fireflies glimmered in the long grass, small echoes of stars fallen too close to the ground. The next morning, I woke to silence. Not peace. Absence. The shard within me had gone still. For months it had pulsed faintly, an unseen companion reminding me that the past still whispered through my veins. Now it was quiet. I touched the scar at my chest and felt only the rhythm of my heart. The realization struck harder than I expected. The shard had not died. It had finally let go. I walked to the ridge overlooking the plains. The light was gold and soft, spilling across the ruins like forgiveness. Below, the valley glimmered with movement. Isolde's drones, reactivated for survey work. They drifted low, weaving patterns over the crops. One of them broke formation and ascended high, trailing a beam of light. It wasn't following any command we had given. "Kyle," Isolde called, climbing up behind me. "The drones, look." The others followed suit, lifting slowly into the air. They arranged themselves in a spiral, each one glowing brighter until the pattern was unmistakable. The same spiral that had appeared when the Scion left us. "It's sending something," she said. "To where?" Her voice trembled. "Everywhere." The spiral tightened, a living constellation spinning against the dawn. Then, one by one, the drones flared and vanished into the upper atmosphere, leaving trails that burned like veins of light. I felt the pulse return for a single instant, sharp, electric, and then it was gone. "They're carrying it," I said softly. "Carrying what?" The last of the pattern. The piece that still remembers what we were. Isolde watched until the sky cleared. Do you think it will reach them? The others out there? Yes, I said. And I think it will tell them to stop. That evening, solace gathered beneath the stars. The people lit torches along the walls, a ring of light that mirrored the one above. Isolde read aloud from the recovered logs, not to mourn the dead, but to name them again, to keep them real. I stood apart, listening, feeling the world settle into its new rhythm. The lattice beneath the planet no longer hummed. It breathed, slow and calm, like a creature learning to sleep. When the reading ended, Isolde approached, her face illuminated by the glow of the torches. You could leave, she said. The sky's open again. The colonies might need someone who remembers. I shook my head. They don't need memories. They need space to build their own. She smiled, and for a moment I saw the navigator she had been, the one who steered us through storms, not because she knew the way, but because she refused to stop searching for it. Then what will you do, Kelvortran? Stay, I said. Watch. Write it down if anyone asks. Later, when the fires burned low, I walked to the ruins of the obelisk. Only a single shard remained, half buried in the soil. Its surface no longer glowed. It reflected only what light the world offered it. I knelt and traced a line across it with my finger. You kept your promise, I whispered. You let us end. A faint shimmer crossed its surface, almost like acknowledgement, then faded. I turned toward the valley, where Solace slept under the soft pulse of the rebuilt power grid. The hum that rose from it was steady, warm, alive, not divine, not eternal, just human. Above, the ring of stars shifted one last time, drawing together into the shape of an eye before scattering into countless points. I could have imagined it. Perhaps I did. But the feeling that followed was unmistakable. A quiet benediction, not from gods or machines, but from the universe itself, content to keep our story without needing to repeat it. Isolde's voice carried on the wind. Kyle, come back inside. It's cold. I lingered one moment longer, breathing the cool air, the scent of rain and new earth. The world had changed its song. So had I. When I finally turned away, the stars above shimmered once more, then dimmed as though closing their eyes to rest. And in that fading light, I understood. We had not defeated the dark. We had simply learned to live within it and to find each other there. The third year after the swarm's departure began with rain that did not stop for 7 days. It washed through the valleys, carrying the last traces of ash into the sea that had begun to reform beyond the western cliffs. The world no longer hissed when water touched it. Life had learned to return in quiet colours, grey moss, pale grass, thin trees that bent toward the sun like supplicants rediscovering faith. I watched from the rampart of the rebuilt citadel, its walls now gardens instead of battlements. The air smelled of stone, salt and green. Isolde stood beside me, her cloak plastered to her shoulders, her hair silver under the storm's glow. The reactor's gone dormant, she said. It sleeps deeper each season, like it's content. Maybe it is, I said. Everything deserves rest eventually. She looked at me then, the faint smile that had become her only armor softening her face. Even you. I hesitated. The shard scar was barely visible now, only a faint shimmer when the lightning flared. I'm trying, I said, but some part of me still listens for the hum. It's gone, Kale. Nothing ever really is, I replied. The storm broke near dusk. Light bled through the clouds, washing the world in gold. The valley glistened, alive again. The survivors, our people, had begun to call themselves the Second Dawn. Children who had never seen the stars before the war pointed upward, tracing constellations with muddy fingers. I envied them their ignorance. They would never know how close the sky had come to swallowing us whole. As night fell, a new sound reached us, soft, harmonic, rising from the earth itself. The reactor, or what was left of it, was singing, a single tone, low and pure. It was not the lattice's cold resonance, nor the Scion's vast choir. It was something smaller, kinder. Isolde's eyes widened. "Kyle, do you hear it?" I nodded. "It's the world remembering how to breathe." We stood together in the sound until it faded, leaving only wind and rain. For the first time in years, I felt no echo within me, no alien rhythm trying to shape my thoughts, only stillness. Later, as the fires burned low, I wrote one last entry in the log Acarine had started long ago. Empires end, voices fade, but life learns. It always does. When I finished, I looked toward the horizon where the ocean met the dark. A single blue star lingered there, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat in the void. I raised a hand, not in prayer or farewell, but acknowledgement. Then I turned away and let the darkness close, gentle and complete. Years folded quietly into themselves. The valley no longer bore the scars of war, only faint impressions beneath the soil, as though the earth remembered gently instead of mourning. The gardens climbed higher along the citadel's walls, and the air smelled of salt and pollen. The Second Dawn had become a city of murmurs and laughter, built from memory, but no longer, bound to it. I walked its streets at dusk, unseen and unnecessary, an old echo moving through a world that had learned to sing without me. Children ran past, their bare feet splashing through the puddles left by the afternoon rain. One paused and looked up, his eyes bright with curiosity. "You're Kale," he said, not asking, just naming. "I was," I replied. "They say you talk to the stars." I smiled. "They talk first." He grinned and ran off before I could say more, leaving his laughter drifting through the air like birdsong. I stood there for a moment, listening to the wind as it carried faint harmonics, tones from the reactor buried deep beneath the city. Its pulse had slowed almost to silence, a steady heartbeat older than any of us. It had become part of the world's rhythm now, inseparable from the tide and the turning of the seasons. When night came, Isolde found me sitting at the western wall, watching the horizon where sea met sky. The ring of stars was visible again, faint but whole. It pulsed once every few minutes, like a breath. "You still keep watch," she said. "Habit," I answered, "or superstition." "Maybe love," she said softly. She sat beside me, shoulders brushing mine. Time had silvered her hair and softened her voice, but her eyes remained bright, the same eyes that once steered ships through storms and madness. "Do you ever think it might come back?" she asked. "The Scion?" "Yes." I shook my head. "Not as it was. It became something better. It learned to end." "And you?" "I'm still learning." She smiled at that, and for a while we said nothing. The tide lapped against the cliffs below, gentle and rhythmic. Somewhere in the city behind us, a chorus began to sing, the old melody that had once risen from the ruins after the war. But now it was slower, warmer, woven through with joy. "I think this is what we were meant to make," Isolde whispered. I nodded. A place where no one needs to remember why we fought. The stars brightened, reflecting on the sea's surface like scattered lanterns. I closed my eyes and let their light fall across my face, feeling the last echoes fade from the scar over my heart. There was no hum now, no shard, no waiting voice, only silence, and within it, peace. The night of the equinox arrived without ceremony. The air was still and heavy, carrying the scent of salt and the whisper of faraway tides. The stars gathered in the sky as if returning to a forgotten appointment, their light clearer than I had ever seen. I walked alone through the streets of solace, past homes built from the bones of our old empire, past the gardens that hummed with insects instead of machines. Every door was closed. Every window glowed with quiet life. It was the kind of silence that meant survival had become ordinary. When I reached the western wall, Isolde was already there. She had grown thin, her movements slower, but her gaze remained fierce. The sea below glimmered with reflections of the stars, a living mirror of the heavens. "You can feel it too," she said. I nodded. The hum. "It's faint, but it's back." She looked toward the horizon. "It isn't the lattice this time. It's deeper, older. The world remembering itself again," I said. "No," she whispered. "Something beyond the world." We stood without speaking as the wind rose, carrying with it a low vibration that trembled through the stones beneath our feet. The ocean answered, forming concentric ripples that spread outward until the entire sea seemed to breathe. The stars pulsed once in unison. I felt the shard scar warm against my chest, an old echo, not pain, but recognition. Isolde grasped my hand. "If it's the cyan—" "It's not," I said, though I wasn't certain. "It's what comes after both of us." A column of light rose far beyond the horizon, faint as moonlight at first, then burning white. It did not descend from the sky. It ascended from the sea, drawn upward by unseen force. The tone that followed was neither voice nor machine. It was the sum of everything that I had ever learned. For an instant, I felt every memory that had passed through me reflected back, cleansed of fear and hunger. The lattice, the swarm, even my own failures, all folded into a single unbroken note. Isolde wept. "What is it saying?" I listened. "That it forgives us," I said. The light dimmed slowly, fading into a shimmer that dissolved among the stars. The sea calmed, the hum vanished, and only the wind remained. Isolde leaned against me, exhausted. "Was that the end?" she asked. "No," I said softly. "That was the world choosing to continue without us." She smiled, eyes closing as if finally allowed to rest. The stars above flickered, rearranging themselves one last time. Their pattern resembled neither ring nor spiral, just an open hand reaching outward. I watched until dawn broke and the image dissolved into light. Then I turned away, knowing the story had already outgrown its tellers. Morning came as a whisper over the water, pale light stretching across the city like a slow exhale. Solace stirred beneath it, rooftops glinting where the dew gathered, streets alive with the rustle of waking voices. I stood at the western wall again, where the sea met the horizon, where the stars had vanished into daylight. The memory of the night still trembled behind my eyes, the column of light, the voice without words, the forgiveness that had moved through everything like wind through an open door. The silence that followed felt different now, not empty, but full, as if the world had taken a long breath and chosen to begin again. Isolde slept still, her head resting against folded arms, the faintest smile touching her lips. I did not wake her. For the first time, she looked peaceful, her body no longer drawn by maps or destinies, only by rest. I watched her breathe, and the rhythm of it reminded me of the tide, of the simple endurance of life when all purpose has finally burned away. I wanted to stay in that stillness forever, but the world always calls. From the east came a soft chime, the bell of the new temple the settlers had built from ship hulls and broken armor. It rang not for worship, but for gathering. The people would meet at dawn to share news, to trade, to remember. I walked down among them, the smell of bread and salt in the air, children darting between stalls, laughter rising like sunlight. No one saluted me anymore. I was just another survivor, another voice among many. It was perfect. Near the market square stood the new archive, a low building of stone and glass, where the old war logs and new songs were kept together. I stepped inside, tracing my fingers along the spines of journals written by hands that had never seen war. The keeper, a young woman with ink-stained fingers, looked up and smiled. "You came to add another page?" she asked. "Perhaps," I said. "Or to see what stories grow when no one's trying to control them." She nodded, understanding more than my words. I handed her Akarine's last logbook, its cover worn smooth. "Keep this," I said. "It belongs to all of us now." Outside, clouds moved slowly across the sky, casting long shadows that rippled like waves. I returned to the wall as the bell tolled again. Isolde was awake, leaning on the railing, her eyes on the horizon. "The tide's coming in," she said. I took her hand. "Then we'll let it." And as the water rose, golden under the sun, the city breathed with us, alive, unburdened, infinite in its ordinariness. The wind carried our silence forward, out across the sea, to wherever new worlds were waiting to begin. The sea reached the base of the western wall by noon, waves curling against stone like hands testing an old memory. The city hummed above it, sunlight glancing off wet roofs, voices rising and falling in the rhythm of ordinary life. I stood at the edge with Isolde beside me, the wind pulling at her cloak, her eyes reflecting the shimmer of the horizon. Everything smelled of salt and warmth. It felt like the world exhaling after a long, long silence. She spoke first. "Do you think we'll be remembered?" I considered the question. The tide hissed over the rocks below, smoothing their edges. "Not as we were," I said, "but maybe as echoes, the kind that change shape each time they're told." "That's enough," she said. We walked down through the city, where streets wound between gardens bursting with green. The air carried the scent of new growth, clean and alive. People waved as we passed, farmers, builders, children. Their eyes no longer carried the haunted sheen of those who expect endings. They had learned to live inside the pause, to treat peace not as gift or debt, but simply as weather. In the square, the archivist's bell tolled once. A gathering formed around the great map, carved into the ground, marking every known settlement across the recovered lands. More dots appeared now, villages along rivers, outposts in mountains, traces of colour spreading outward like veins of light. Life had begun again, and it did not need us to guide it. Isolde reached for my hand. "You could still go," she said. "Follow the colonies, help them build their fleets." "I've built enough," I replied. "The stars no longer need my name carved into them." She smiled. "Then stay." The bell rang again, softer this time. Somewhere in the crowd, a young woman began to sing the old hymn of the Seventh Bridge, but the words had changed. No longer a lament, but a promise. Others joined until the square became a single voice rising into the sky. I closed my eyes and listened, feeling it pass through me like wind through an open door. When the song ended, the horizon burned with gold. I returned to the wall one last time. The sea had risen higher, swallowing the footprints we'd left that morning. Isolde stood at the top of the steps, her silhouette haloed by sunlight. "Kyle," she called, "come back inside." "In a moment," I said. I looked out over the water. The sun dipped lower, its reflection stretching endlessly toward me. I could almost see the stars waiting beyond it, patient and silent. For the first time, I felt no pull to follow, only gratitude. The wind shifted, carrying her laughter down to me. I smiled, closed my eyes, and let the tide erase the last trace of my shadow. The end.